Just as in the 1916 Rising here in Ireland, the role of women in the Russian Revolution in 1917 has largely been forgotten or deliberately erased. In Ireland, women like Constance Markiewicz and Dr. Kathleen Lynn played key roles in the Rising. And the same can be said of Russia, where women such as Alexandra Kollontai led the revolutionary movement. The 1917 revolution fundamentally changed women's lives in Russia. To understand the scale of the transformation, we need to take a look at women's lives before the revolution. In the early 20th century, women in Russia were regarded as second-class citizens and had virtually no civic rights. They didn't have the right to vote or stand for election. Most women were entirely dependent economically on men. Many marriages were arranged and there was no right to divorce. Homosexuality was illegal and so was abortion. Women workers faced further issues such as low wages, poor working conditions and no childcare. The outbreak of World War I in 1914 caused even more hardship and women bore the brunt of it. Firstly, war times equalled rations. It was mostly up to the women to make the meagre rations feed their families. Secondly, with the men being conscripted into the army and sent to the front, many families were left without any income at all. There was no social welfare and hardly any health care. By 1917, after 3 years of war, the people had had enough. On International Women's Day, women began pouring out onto the streets of Petrograd, now St. Petersburg, demanding bread and an end to the war. They threw snowballs on the factory windows where the men were working and called on their fellow workers to join them. They did, and these events sparked the general strike of what was later to be called the February Revolution. Throughout the revolutionary events of 1917, women continued to play a leading role. Because of Tsarist political repression, many Russian socialists, including members of the Bolshevik Party, were living in exile abroad. Alexandra Kollontai was one of the leading members of the Revolutionary Bolshevik Party. Having been in exile, she returned to Russia immediately of hearing the news of the February Revolt. She and other women Bolsheviks spent 1917 organising women in the struggle and giving speeches to the workers' councils or Soviets around the country. They called on women to join their fellow workers in the fight against war and poverty and for the reorganisation of society based on the democracy of the workers' councils. One tramway worker, Alexandra Rodionova, said of this time, "I felt that all of my familiar life was falling apart and I rejoiced in its destruction. The collective struggle threw old sexist ideas out the window and opened up possibilities that women had only dreamt of in the past." The successful uprising in October placed power firmly in the hands of the workers' councils. Alexandra Kollontai became the first female member of cabinet as she was appointed Commissar for Welfare. She began immediately writing laws to benefit women and to break down the oppressive traditional family structures. Divorce was made legal and easily obtainable. Healthcare for women and children was introduced. Education was made free and separated from religious institutions. Homosexuality was made legal, and there was even some same-sex marriages. Abortion was made legal in 1920. These measures were unheard of at the time in any part of the Western world. Women Bolsheviks also organised themselves into a group known as the Zentodel. They set up communal kitchens and laundries, freeing women up from housework. They travelled across the country, educating women in everything from socialism to history to politics. Unfortunately, the hardships of the Civil War made it difficult for the Bolsheviks to implement their policies. The most radical workers, both men and women joined the Red Army to defend their newly created society, and millions perished in the war. The rise of the Stalinist bureaucracy in the 1920s also meant the rolling back on the progressive measures introduced by Kollontai. Kollontai herself was sent away to Scandinavia as an ambassador, and Stalin's purges destroyed any remnants of the original Bolshevik leadership. By the 1940s, homosexuality and abortion had again been made illegal, and women were awarded medals for motherhood. Despite the fact that the gains were lost, the Russian Revolution of 1917 proves that a working class movement can fundamentally change old ideas and traditions.